Right now, throughout the United States, the vicious Venezuelan street gang Tren De Aragua has been terrorizing American citizens. Unlike American gangs such as the Bloods and Crips, Tren De Aragua operates by no street codes and are known to target the most vulnerable parts of society, such as the elderly. Every single day, there is a new news report about another heinous crime committed by this gang against Americans. Tren De Aragua is a fairly recent street gang that was formed inside Venezuelan prisons in 2009. It is believed that they have more than 10,000 members and they are growing drastically by the day. They were founded by a vicious gangster named Hector Guerrero, who is the kind of guy that will blick first and ask questions later. He founded the gang inside a unique prison in Venezuela called Tren, where they have some of the strangest conditions imaginable. Here, the inmates run the prison and they have access to pools, alcohol, women, illegal substances, and even a nightclub. But because the inmates have unlimited access to whatever their heart desires, if you are an individual that is not associated with a gang, then your life is constantly at risk. As you can imagine, with this type of setup, the inmates have access to all types of weapons, including straps and bulletproof vests. And within the prison, Tren De Aragua is calling all the shots and brutalizing inmates that are not affiliated. And outside of the prison, they are inflicting terror on law-abiding citizens living in Venezuela, just trying to work hard, do things the right way, and provide for their families. This gang is involved with every aspect of street life, from contract hits to the distribution of illegal substances. Eventually, after terrorizing Venezuelans for years, the country had enough and sent 11,000 Venezuelan police and military personnel backed by armored vehicles to go storm the Tren prison, which was their headquarters and where they were operating their business from. After police attempted to take back control of the gang's headquarters, a bunch of high-ranking members, because of their connections, were able to escape, and have expanded to places like Colombia, Peru, Chile, and now the United States. This gang is absolutely elite when it comes to their recruiting tactics. They are able to spread ridiculously fast like a deadly virus because they target the most vulnerable populations in whatever cities they spread to. Now that you guys understand some of the history of this vicious gang, we are going to look at some of the states within the United States that this gang has started taking over. Let's look at what is happening right now in Texas, where Tren De Aragua has been brutalizing Americans. One of the first incidents to get mainstream attention was when Tren De Aragua gang members tied up a Dallas woman, brutalized her, and had to use Google Translate in order to communicate with the woman.
A group of men arrested for beating and robbing a Dallas woman last month are members of a Venezuelan street gang.
According to the criminal complaint, a single woman who was living in a nice suburb in Dallas had just pulled into her garage and was getting out of her car when she was approached by 4 men. These men then threatened the woman with weapons, drag her inside her home, and then tie her up with rope. The men then start bashing her over the head with a strap while the woman begs for her life. During this crazy ordeal, the men are shouting that they will cut her fingers off if she doesn't comply. The woman, fearing for her safety, decides to fully comply and tells them where all her valuables are located. The men then steal valuables such as electronics, jewelry, and Gucci handbags.
4 out of 5 suspects for the September robbery are now in custody. 3 of them were arrested after a tense standoff in Irving yesterday afternoon.
No matter where you live in the world, when facing decades in prison, someone will always snitch. And that is exactly what happened. The first guy arrested ended up ratting out all of his buddies because he was terrified about going to jail in the United States.
Police caught up with him because the first guy to be arrested ratted the rest of them out.
According to those court documents, the first suspect to be arrested gave names of those accomplices to police. He also gave an address in Irving where they could be located at, and he told police they are a part of a Venezuelan gang.
The man in question was a 28-year-old named Manuel Hernandez. He ended up being very useful to police and gave up lots of information about the interworkings of Tren De Aragua.
4 men arrested for allegedly beating a woman, tying her up, and robbing her inside her northwest Dallas home on September 21st are believed to be connected to a Venezuelan gang, according to newly obtained arrest warrant.
The woman who was victimized in this heinous attack has been dealing with severe depression and PTSD. The trauma you will feel and the emotional distress you will deal with after going through an incident like this will last a lifetime. Your house is supposed to be your sanctuary, a place where you feel safe. Imagine the terror this poor lady feels every time she hears a car driving by her house or a loud noise at night.
The robbery was reported by a woman who neighbors say lives alone at a home near the Dallas North Tollway and Lover's Lane. The woman told police she was approached as she got out of her vehicle and forced into her home at gunpoint. She was hit on her head with a gun and tied up. The suspects used Google Translate to communicate.
The fact that these guys used Google Translate might be the most ridiculous thing about this whole ordeal. If you're going to victimize an innocent woman coming home from work, at least do your research beforehand and have an idea of what you are going to say. Using Google Translate is the definition of sloppy work. How'd you guys not memorize the script before you came?
The men threatened to cut off her fingers if she did not cooperate. They stole $75,000 worth of jewelry and more.
This crime would have in all likelihood never gotten solved had it not been for a fingerprint that Manuel Hernandez left on a wooden box. The only reason police were able to trace this fingerprint back to Manuel Hernandez was because 2 days earlier he had gotten arrested. While driving in Colleyville under the influence of an illegal substance, Manuel Hernandez was pulled over by police. Shortly after pulling him over and running his name in the system, police noticed something was wrong. He had no driver's license, no insurance, and the vehicle wasn't even registered, so they decided to search the car to see what else he might be hiding. This is when they find all types of drug paraphernalia scattered throughout the ground, and they detain him and bring him into custody. After only one night, Manuel Hernandez is released, and he goes out the very next day and commits this heinous robbery.
A fingerprint on a wooden coin box, however, led police to Manuel Hernandez, who coincidentally was booked by Colleyville police just 2 days earlier and released the day before the robbery. The 28-year-old had a defective brake light, no driver's license, no insurance, the vehicle was not registered, and he was allegedly in possession of drug paraphernalia. So Dallas police used that info to locate Hernandez.
Having the same first and last name must be rough.
At his apartment in Hearst. During an interview with Dallas police, court documents say Hernandez admitted to being involved in the robbery and gave names of 4 others involved, who he says are part of a criminal street gang. Of those men, 3 were arrested.
After discovering who was responsible, Texas police, who fully recognized the imminent threat that this gang poses on the community, were not going to let these guys get away. So in order to make sure everything went smoothly, they sent a SWAT team with bulletproof vehicles to an Irving apartment complex to handle the arrests.
Following a SWAT standoff at an Irving apartment complex Thursday, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement tells Fox 4 all 4 suspects are from Venezuela. All now have immigration holds, according to Dallas County Jail records, keeping them from being released on bond until ICE can determine next steps.
As I make this video, I have to keep updating it because these guys will not slow down with their crazy crime spree. Just yesterday, a Tren De Aragua member was arrested for catching a body.
A surge in gang violence by illegal immigrants across the state. Dallas police charged 4 illegals with robbing a woman at gunpoint during a home invasion. San Antonio police arrested 20 people on drugs and human trafficking charges at an apartment complex.
Once you've got people engaging in the distribution of human beings, that's when we need the government to step in and get these threats out of our communities.
And some are confirmed members of the brutal gang, the Venezuelan gang, Tren De Aragua.
And recently, they have been involving themselves with murders.
Tren De Aragua member was arrested in Sunland Park. Homeland Security Investigations posted this photo to X. HSI says the man was arrested on an outstanding warrant for homicide in the state of Texas on Friday. Officials have not yet released the man's identity.
Now let's look at what is happening in New York City, where some gang members got arrested for trying to blick down a police officer. When New York City police officers attempted to pull over a reckless gang member who was literally driving his scooter into the wrong direction of traffic, they got blitzed with a rain of bullets when the man jumped off his bike and started dumping at them.
Of shooting 2 officers after they tried to pull him over for driving the wrong way, but prosecutors say his criminal activity goes much deeper than this one incident.
For anyone out there that thinks this gang is not a real threat and just used for political gain, just wait until you hear this story.
this suspect came into this country illegally a year ago. He was arraigned on a number of charges, including 2 counts of attempted murder in the first degree. He used to live here at this shelter off Ditmars Boulevard, but says he was kicked out.
I'm sure this does not surprise anyone.
Now, he made a shocking confession to authorities, saying that he is a member of the vicious Venezuelan gang Tren De Aragua, and that gang is smuggling firearms into migrant shelters.
Imagine if we had done the right thing and taken care of this threat earlier, then maybe we wouldn't have all the military caliber weapons that are in the hands of criminal street gangs.
Bernardo Raul Castro Mata, the Venezuelan migrant who shot 2 police officers earlier this month, came face to face with the judge this morning. The 19-year-old arrived in a wheelchair and didn't say a word, but prosecutors say he spoke at length with investigators, giving shocking details of that night and what he's been up to since he arrived in New York City.
This man has been nothing but an absolute terror since arriving in the United States.
He told cops he worked for DoorDash and received the gun he used to shoot the officers from a friend.
And this is why it is best to have people drop off your food at your neighbor's front door. You never know who your delivery driver might be.
Last night I was coming home from work. I was in a car with my friend, and my friend, Jose Maita, gave me a bag with a gun in it and asked me to keep it for him.
The suspect confessing to police that he's a member of the notorious Venezuelan gang Tren De Aragua. According to audio recordings read by prosecutors, Mata claims he was recruited by a cousin to join the gang to do robberies.
As we saw with the poor woman who was brutalized and robbed in Dallas, these guys target the most vulnerable people.
But the most shocking claim, the gang has been smuggling guns into city-run shelters.
Tren De Aragua members are smuggling firearms into city shelters inside food delivery packages. That way they'll have to go through the metal detector.
Imagine all the undocumented straps this gang has illegally brought inside this country.
June 3rd, 2 NYPD officers attempted to pull him over for driving an unregistered scooter the wrong way on a one-way street in East Elmhurst. As police tried to pull him over, Mata ran off. Police chased him, and when they caught up with him, he resisted arrest.
And turned into the Venezuelan version of King Von and started dumping on these boys.
Mata allegedly fired at both officers, shooting Officer Christopher Abreu in the leg and Officer Richard Yaruso point blank in the front of his bulletproof vest.
This incident could have easily ended with 2 casualties had things been a little different.
In court this morning, the ADA says Mata also said that shooting at police officers is what they do in his home country.
It is common practice for Tren De Aragua gang members to shoot at police officers, because Venezuelan police officers shoot at gang members for minor infractions. Venezuelan police officers get shot often in my home country because criminals feel there is a chance of getting away.
He was once again held without bail.
Since it's so treacherous in the slums of Venezuela, some of these guys feel like this is the best approach to getting away from police.
This dangerous individual wasn't afraid to shoot a New York City police officer because he thought he was going to get away with it. Not in this country.
His attorney then argued that this young man deserves bail and the opportunity to be released back into the public because he ratted out other gang members.
Now, Mata pleaded not guilty to all of their charges. Now, since he ratted out his gang, his attorney did ask the judge to keep him in protective custody. The judge did grant that request. Now,
unfortunately, this was not the only time that Tren De Aragua gang members have been involved in a brutal attack on New York City police officers.
Suspects charged in the Times Square attack against 2 NYPD officers are behind bars tonight after facing a judge.
This is we're learning now 2 of the suspects are tied to a Venezuelan gang.
Tren De Aragua somehow finds themselves involved in almost all situations involving illegal immigrants attacking American citizens.
I can tell you this, I spoke with ICE today, and ICE confirming that 2 of the suspects in this case are members of a brutal Venezuelan gang. That gang is called Tren De Aragua. Federal authorities saying this is just proof that gang members are making it across the southern border.
When a group of Tren De Aragua gang members all decided to get intoxicated and cause a disturbance in the middle of the sidewalk, it was only going to be a matter of time until they got the attention of a New York City police officer. When police officers approached them and asked them to move so that they were not blocking citizens' ability to comfortably walk down the street, the Tren De Aragua gang members made it clear that they had no respect for the police officers, and they beat them up in the middle of the street and made them look like a bunch of clowns getting bullied by gang members.
Wilson Juarez and Kelvin Servita Arocha in court today in Lower Manhattan are members of the Venezuelan gang Tren De Aragua, according to ICE.
And as we learned earlier, this gang has no respect or fear when it comes to police officers.
The two are part of the migrant mob accused of beating and kicking two NYPD officers in Times Square last month.
Because of the United States' laid-back approach to crime, these guys have grown cocky and bold. They would never dare to attempt such a brazen attack like that on police officers from their own country, because in Venezuela they have a shoot first, ask questions later approach to crime. Culturally, they have no tolerance to crime compared to the United States, where we glamorize the biggest gangsters and killers.
ICE telling me today that Juarez should not have even been in the U.S. A judge in El Paso, Texas, ordered him deported a year ago. Now they, along with 5 others in this case, are behind bars at Rikers. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg asking the judge for bail since the suspects have been indicted.
Hypothetically, what do you guys think would happen if an American were to commit that same crime on Venezuelan police officers? Would they be given the same grace and granted bail? Or would they be left in a prison to rot and then given trumped-up charges in a country with a whole lot of pride for their citizens?
Our criminal justice system did its job. These individuals are all behind bars where they belong.
After their initial arrest, Juarez and Arocha were released without bail by DA Bragg, along with Yorman Reveron and Darwin Gomez Isquiel. Isquiel was arrested again this week and charged with shoplifting at a Macy's in Queens.
If there's no consequences, then what's going to deter members from this gang from continuing to commit crimes?
They should have never been released. The DA in the case should have requested bail. The judge should have kept them behind bars.
Yohenry Brito was the only suspect who was sent to Rikers on $15,000 bail after the beating in January. A source telling me that he was released this week after an activist pastor from a Brooklyn church posted his bail.
Instead of helping out one of the thousands of minorities in America who are currently rotting away in prison for victimless crimes such as small possession charges, this activist decided to bail out a violent offender who attacked a police officer.
However, he is now back in Rikers while authorities investigate the source of that money. Police body cam video shows the interaction with the officers and the migrants on January 27th. Officers had instructed the group not to block the sidewalk and to move along. Some of the suspects' lawyers raising questions as to whether police overreacted.
I think it's undisputed that physical contact in this case was initiated by a police officer.
The bottom line is that this individual didn't comply.
And lastly, there have been countless cases coming out of New York involving Tren De Aragua and the most heinous crime of them all, the distribution of humans. This crime is so disgusting that I have decided not to go into details about what exactly they are doing, but if you are curious, a simple Google search of Tren De Aragua in New York City will give you all the heinous details. Tren De Aragua should not be a Republican or Democratic talking point, but rather a national security threat. Unfortunately, in this society, when you make everything political, it takes away from cold, hard facts and the truth. It seems as if Democrats throughout the country are minimizing the threat of Tren De Aragua because they don't want it used as a Republican talking point. As a journalist, I try to stay as neutral as possible, and in real life, I consider myself an independent. I vote based on the person, not based on a class system, and while there is no denying the fact that Republicans have lied about countless things over the years, you can't make up dead bodies and some of the crazy crimes this gang has been committing. As hardworking blacks born in America continue to have their businesses stripped from them and given to illegal immigrants, the frustration level in this country has reached a boiling point.
But a migrant was able to secure a special loan to buy her business.
But I need my president to tell me why I worked so hard all these years, all these decades. Couldn't get a business loan, but I bust my ass to get the money to create my business.
Now, California lawmakers also recently passed a bill that could make undocumented immigrants eligible for home loans. And of course, we know about car loans. Many companies in America who offer special loans to those who may not be citizens or they're migrants. There are also monetary assistance programs that are offered to non-U.S. citizens or migrants who may not be in this country legally.
As resources are stripped from hard-working American-born minorities and given to illegal immigrants, they are also being victimized by Venezuelan gangs. As minorities continue to get victimized by Tren De Aragua, nobody seems to care or offer up any help. They began receiving national attention and became a topic of debate a couple months ago when they viciously took over an apartment complex in Colorado.
It's a scene that seems to be out of a developing nation, where corruption and violence run rampant. But this surveillance video is from an apartment complex in Aurora, Colorado.
Gang members used a mixture of threats, coercion, and violence to fully take control of a troubled apartment complex and made it an extremely difficult place to live if you were not associated with the gang.
To your knowledge, what are the men in this video doing?
They are going through the complex, like I'm told that they are, heavily armed. They patrol the complex. They control who comes in, who goes out. They go from door to door. They have forced their way into many complexes. They have thrown people out.
Gang members within this apartment complex somehow had access to military-grade weapons and were bullying and terrorizing residents and complex workers. When an employee found a group of male squatters in a vacant apartment, the gang tried to offer him a bribe of $500 to turn the blind eye. They then viciously attacked him until he fell, and when he fell to the ground, they continued stomping on his head until the complex worker somehow miraculously got away. He was then hospitalized for a few days and is quoted saying he has no idea how he was able to get away from the situation and that he thought they were going to take his life. But unfortunately for the worker, the story doesn't end here. He then began receiving text messages from the gang which included terrifying details such as his home address and the name of his wife. After this, the complex worker was too scared to continue and had to leave his job. Tren De Aragua has been absolutely terrorizing Colorado, and they've been linked to every possible crime from the robbery of a jewelry store to murder.
Aurora City Councilwoman Danielle Jurinsky blames neighboring Denver for its sanctuary policies, which provide services to undocumented migrants, the vast majority not connected to crimes and there to find work.
A majority of Venezuelan immigrants, illegal or not, are hardworking people that mind their business and just want to provide for their families. The problem is that Tren De Aragua is so vicious that the small amount of members coming from that gang are having a giant impact on United States citizens.
Those seen in this video, though, believed to be associated with the violent Venezuelan gang, Tren De Aragua, designated by the U.S. Treasury Department as a transnational criminal organization, closely watched by the FBI.
We're certainly tracking that particular gang, TDA, as we refer to it, whether it's their drug trafficking, extortion, kidnapping for ransom, different kinds of violent crime.
After the video surfaced, a lot of Americans were horrified. But not everyone. There is a large percentage of Americans that believe we should allow for even more immigrants and that we should fully open up our borders.
Immediately surged to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
And some take that sentiment even further and believe not only should we allow an unlimited amount of immigrants to come into the United States, but that we should also give them resources to make their lives easier.
There's a lot of talk around the country about New York City's new Helping Hand program.
This would provide immigrant families with prepaid debit cards, something Americans don't currently have access to.
It provides migrant families with prepaid debit cards. $53 million have been given to the program, which will give asylum seekers arriving at the Roosevelt Hotel money.
A lot of Americans right now love the idea of prepaid cards and are fully supportive of the movement.
I think it's a good idea. Yeah, I'm totally for it.
I think that is an incredible idea.
We're going to expand it even more.
When legendary New York rapper 50 Cent heard about this, he went straight to social media to vent his frustrations.
The pilot program drawing immediate criticism, including from rapper 50 Cent, who went on to social media to vent his frustration, writing, "Maybe Trump is the answer."
I try to look at this as a problem with national security, not politics. Democrat or Republican, I think we can all agree that we want to keep United States citizens safe. And while there are tons of great people all throughout the world, we shouldn't be assisting others until we take care of the homeless problem in the United States.
I told 50 Cent to hit me up. I would love to explain it to him.
Ironically, this same mayor was arrested a couple months ago for stealing money and corruption, so if 50 Cent were to meet with him, they would have to link up at his prison cell.
And over the weekend, Texas Governor Greg Abbott joining the choir of criticism while on Fox News, calling the program insanity.
It may be the most reprehensible thing that I've seen take place over the past 48 hours.
It's the latest effort by New York City officials to deal with the ongoing migrant surge. More than 173,000 migrants and asylum seekers have arrived in New York City since the spring of 2022.
To put things in perspective, Wyoming has a population of 584,057 people. So 173,000 would be nearly 1/3 of the population in Wyoming.
Both the New York Democratic governor and the mayor have been pleading for federal support, insisting the city is at a breaking point.
New York City has been completely overrun with immigrants, a majority of whom are good, hard-working people. But within those immigrants, Tren De Aragua members are slipping through the cracks, and because of their elite recruiting skills, they are spreading like a wildfire.
This has hurt us. And where the White House needs to make adjustments.
But not everyone agrees, and surprisingly, some big-name celebrities are pushing back.
I see homeless folks in the streets of New York all the time that are American citizens. I damn sure see them in California. We've got poor, impoverished, starving people who were born and raised in this nation. How in the hell do we come up with a $53 million pilot program for illegals, but folks who are here legally are born here, we don't have enough of them?
Right now, in places like California, people are pushing hard for a new state bill that would give illegal immigrants house loans so they will have a more comfortable life in the United States.
Social and economic benefits of homeownership should be accessible to everyone, regardless of immigration status.
State bill could allow undocumented immigrants to purchase a home.
If passed, California would become the first state to grant them state-supported home loans.
The first thing I question when I hear about these types of programs is where exactly is all the money coming from to enable this?
Right, this legislation refers to a California state program, but it could have national ramifications, particularly in an election year.
It's legislation in Sacramento receiving national attention, a first-in-the-nation effort to allow undocumented immigrants state money for the purchase of a home.
If you think taxes are high right now in California, imagine how high they are going to be after this.
The bill's author, Assemblyman Joaquin Arambula of Fresno.
The social and economic benefits of homeownership should be accessible to everyone, regardless of immigration status.
For those who qualify under the California Dream for All program, the state would pay the 20% down payment for a first-time home buyer, up to $150,000.
Imagine how much easier your life would be if someone paid a $150,000 down payment on your house.
Assembly Bill 1840 would amend the program so that those in the country in violation of federal law would also be eligible.
You heard that right, even hardcore criminals would be eligible for this program.
Undocumented individuals have historically been excluded from housing initiatives because of federal restrictions. Ensuring universal access by all qualified borrowers to the California Dream for All program will contribute to the overall success and vitality of California.
Backlash has been swift.
And now you got California trying to get homes for illegal immigrants? Are you kidding me?
Every dollar that goes to an illegal immigrant is a dollar not going to our veterans or other Californians, other legal residents or citizens that also qualify for that money. This isn't an unlimited bucket of money that the state has available for these homebuyer programs.
According to the experts, there is a very strong possibility that everything gets passed and fully comes to fruition.
Evan Simon has been covering the vote for the political website California Globe. He says passage of the bill is nearly assured.
There's enough progressive Democrats right now in Sacramento who will get it passed.
In order to pay for all these programs out there meant to help illegal immigrants, the government is taking money back from poor veterans struggling in America.
Thousands of veterans are being served a bill.
Right now, many low-income veterans receiving pension payments from the VA are being hit with letters saying they need to pay back thousands and thousands of dollars.
I think most Americans would agree that immigrants can bring a lot of good to our country, especially if they go through all the proper protocols and come here legally. Problems arise when people come illegally, since we cannot run a proper background check and fully know the extent of their criminal past. This is how you get deadly gangs like Tren De Aragua fully stationary in the United States. With all that being said, recently there has been some pushback from the black gangs in Chicago. The gangs here are not going to allow Tren De Aragua to set up shop and potentially victimize their mothers and sisters. Allegedly, there has been a lot of tension and even a couple incidents that could have gone deadly. Because of how new Tren De Aragua is, Americans have yet to fully recognize the severity of the threat they pose on our society. Hopefully, police and the proper authorities take control of the situation before American gangs decide enough is enough and deal with it on their own terms.